as required by the Open Public Meetings Act was provided on December 17th, 2024 by posting the notice to the respective clerks, City of Lambertville, Borough of Stockton, and Township of West Anglo, and advertised in the Hunterdon County Democrat and Hampton Times newspaper.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice and justice for all.
Roll call.
Jennifer Batchelor,
Here.
Martha Dennis,
Here.
Gina Fischetti,
Here.
Brian Keys, Kevin Kowaleski,
here.
Erin O'Leary,
Here.
Michael Strauss,
Here.
Ronnie Topolino,
Here.
Jim Gallagher.
All right, so is there anyone from the PTO? Is there a report from the PTO?
No,
We're busy enough during the school year.
they're taking a little relaxation.
Anyone from LA yet?
But he's on vacation, Ronnie, you know, it's these summer meetings, nobody shows. That's why the word's fast tonight.
Do you have any correspondence?
No.
Okay, correspondence. So then move on to your. No, we have to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
So I needed a motion to approve it's a vote. Meeting from the last meeting and the executive session. So moved.
Second.
Martha and Michael. All right, and then we move on to. Presentation about the. So it's- I'm so sorry. All in favor? All in favor of the approval for the minutes? Aye. Any extensions, any? Okay. Now.
So we have one presentation and then my update. Actually two presentations, I'll say. So I'd like to invite, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Danielle Lennon to the podium. We're going to start off first with our annual NJGPA, which is our graduation proficiency assessment results from this past spring.
Good evening, members of the board, community. We're very excited about the results for the NJGPA. I will present a little background information about the NJGPA and the requirements to give you perspective. And then the growth, the student growth that we will certainly celebrate tonight, as you will see in the data. So we always start with a reminder of our demographics. This is our district-wide demographics from June 30th, 2025. So it does give you the overall understanding of our district enrollment at 792. You'll be able to see these as I shared them earlier, and then we'll share them with the community. But it does allow you to see where students are and what those percentages are, as these are subgroups that are determined by the state of New Jersey. So the state of New Jersey requires us to report out on these specific subgroups. These aren't anything that we created. So just a little bit of background information about the NJGPA, or the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment. So it's a statute from the state of New Jersey given to all grade 11 students. It is designed to measure to the extent to which students are graduation ready for English language arts and math. Graduation readiness is reported on separate subject areas. So separate for ELA and then separate for math. And the ELA component aligns with the grade 9 standards. So it is, even though it's given in March, it is aligned to all standards that the students have been exposed to in the previous grade. That's for the English language arts piece. The math component aligns with Algebra 1 and geometry standards. So if a student took Algebra 1 in 9th grade, then they would be tested on this information in 11th grade. And the geometry is for those students who took Algebra 1 as 8th graders. So the state says you have to be tested on a high school math course. So the measures how well the students have mastered the standards. And there are 2 performance levels. As you know, that there's multiple performance levels with the NJSLA, which all students take in grades 3 to 11. So graduation ready is anywhere from a 725 to an 850, and not graduation ready is below the 725. So knowing that we will have students who will not meet the minimum score component, there are 3 different pathways the state of New Jersey calls it. So they can retake either or, depending on what they did not meet 725 in the components of either the ELA and or the math in the fall. There also is a administration in the summer, but none of our students took that. And just to give you some historical information, none of our students have ever taken, or since the counselor had information, since the NJ GPA in the fall or the summer. So that if they don't do the retake, then they can meet the designated cut score with a different competency test, which I'll show you on the next page, or they can complete what's called a portfolio appeal. And again, these are all things that are set according to the statute of the New Jersey Department of Education. So the menu of competency tests. So as I said, this is what we might call the second pathway. The first pathway is to take the NJGPA and get above a 725. If that doesn't happen for the student, then these are the different things they can take. And this is what the state calls the second pathway. So those of you familiar with an ACT, if you got an ACT reading score of greater than or above a 17, that would meet the state's requirement. And then there's just, I'm not going to read through all of them, but you'll also see that the PSATs, which our students take, as well as the SATs, are listed there as well. For math, it's a shorter list, but you also still see the PSET, the ACT, and the SAT. The AccuPlacer is an assessment that's given at some of the community colleges. And again, it just outlines what the score is. And then, as I said, the third pathway is what's called a portfolio appeal. And certain criteria set from the DOE, and then the student would meet that criteria. Typically, it's one-on-one with a teacher. Usually begins typically in the winter months. They complete the expectations, meeting with the teacher, providing artifacts or evidence that they've met these standards, and then we submit it to the state. Anyone's interested in the exact, the technical terms and all of the wording from the state, the orange text is a link right to the state's website. So reporting on our students, great ways to celebrate our 11th graders. So for the English language arts in spring of 24-25, we had 91.5% of our students graduation ready in the district, which is higher than you see the 80% in the state, and 8.5% were not graduation ready, and compared to the state at 19.3%. For mathematics, 65% of our students were graduation ready, compared to the 58% of the state. And then you can see the 35% are not. Remember those 91.5 and 65 because you'll see them as markers on the variety of different slides or graphs that are coming up. So this is a comparison of 24-25 school year to 23-24. We had 59 students tested. Again, we're only looking at grade 11. And the year before, in spring of 24, we had 65. Again, there's that 91.5. So we even made progress in a year. And so we're very excited because you can see the progress that we made, which was plus 10.8, whereas the state only made, 1.1. So our students are growing at a much faster rate than the state overall. That's for English language arts. For math, again, we had 60 students test. And again, you can see our 65% are graduation ready, up 57.4. So again, when we look at these scores, and this will be a theme as we talk about data and our student achievement throughout the year, we're going to be looking at student growth. So we want to look at where the students are. We want to compare them to the previous school year. Again, these are different children or different students, but when we see the NJSLA reports that I'll present in October, we'll show you a little bit more about those cohorts. So what did the students do as 8th graders and then 9th graders? We're going to have access to a lot of that data this year, and that will be what some of the presentations that I share with you is the student growth piece of it. So it's always a little tricky to see the numbers, but if you look at this on your own, you'll see the N count or the number of students from one year to the next. So 24 is blue and 25 is orange. So you can see the numbers went up. And again, you'll see there's that 91.5% that we've now looked at on 3 different slides. And as I said before, these are the subgroups that the state says we have to report out. You have to report it to the Board of Education. You have to have it out for the community to see. Those are our students with disabilities. Yes, go ahead. And here's our math scores. If you see an N0, that just means that we had less than 10 report. And so we don't publish those reports because it's too small of a sample size. So if something to celebrate as well, you see the orange bar go up and go up a lot, even just looking at those numbers. So that is really great progress for our students. It's a kudos to the teachers, our 11th grade teachers, 10th grade, 9th grade teachers who have really done a great job this year. So what we can conclude from this, we perform better than the district in previous years. We're better than the state average. The multilingual learner population in this case was too small to report out. And then the subgroup data showed improvements in previous years. So our access for ELS, this we also administer in the spring. This is typically administered about the 2nd and 3rd week in March. And these 2 reports come out at the same time. And that's why the State Department of Education says you present these 2 assessment results on the same night within the certain amount of days of receiving the results. So the access for ELS, you may have heard, oftentimes we used to call it the WIDA. WIDA is the company like Pearson. So if you hear people refer to the WIDA, that's just the name that people kind of latched onto it, like Kleenex. They're not tissues, they're Kleenex. Same thing with this. But anyway, so we'll talk about access for ELS because that is the name of the test. It's given annually to multilingual learners. It assesses those 4 domains, reading, listening, speaking, and writing. The students get an overall score, and then they also get results from each of these 6 performance levels. So they're like the standards or the different levels of performance. All K-12 students who are eligible to be enrolled in English as a second language take the access, and for kindergartners, it's a paper pencil test, and then for students in 1st through 12th grade, it's an online administration. So it's a little hard, there's a lot of numbers on this screen, but I did want to show you the comparison of ELS because this gives a little context to the bar graph you'll see. So in kindergarten, we had 7 ELS last year, and this year we had 14 that tested. That just was an increase in enrollment in multilingual learners. And then you see the numbers moving forward, and these were our K6 numbers in the first graph or the first table. And then in the second table, you can see that those were the ELS in the high school. So the overall school data is displayed in this chart. And this just gives you an idea of how many students are in kindergarten. We're at level 1. This data then will translate directly into the bar graphs, but I did want to be able to show you, where the students fell. And again, we receive students all throughout the year. We can receive students that are in our ESL program in January and February and May. So it does not necessarily correlate to their level. We will track that internally in terms of cohorts, but I did want to be able to present this data so you could see everything.
Okay, so can I ask a question? a kid in kindergarten, does that child stay as a ESL student throughout their entire?
No.
So
Nope.
they can, at some point, based on
Mhm.
skill and language, be no longer considered?
Absolutely.
Oh, and is that based on testing?
Yep.
Okay.
It's based on this testing,
Okay.
and the access for L. So when students come in, we give them a quick screener to find out where they are so that we can then teach them at that level and group the kids in Accelerate or Flex. And then we are able to monitor their progress with the access for Ls.
And do we do anything with regard to the preschool, group in terms of ESL?
We do have we have one of the ESL teachers usually goes in as like a consultancy. That's what typically it's called in preschool. So they go in and they work with the students a little bit, but the formal program is a K-12 program, and that's when they're screened. So there's no screening currently for preschool.
Thank you.
So what you'll see here is, this is what I was referring to, because I didn't want anyone to say, oh my gosh, look at all of our emerging. Well, the emerging is because we had a lot of kindergarten students. We had 14, as you saw. And so the results are where we are right now. And so our job is to track those students as we do with all of our benchmark assessments, and then we can provide the services for them. This year, we also had students exit. So typically we would have 10th and 11th graders. There was no reporting data because those students had exited. You saw a couple of them on that first screen where there were 3 one year and 0 the next year, or 3 last year and 0 this year. That's because those students exited. So we track who's exiting when, but we may receive a 7th grader who would be maybe considered emerging. And then they may move up the levels and essentially exit. They need a 4.5 or above to exit. So here are our conclusions. Students, 3 students scored a 4.5. Here's our information or higher will exit ESL. 3 additional students scored a 4.0 or 4.4. So we will make sure that we're monitoring their progress and getting them to the 4.5. Typically, it takes 5 to 7 years to gain academic language proficiency. That's based on the research. And what we look at is we look at our programs like Wit and Wisdom that promote a greater focus on reading grade level text, exposing them to that, as well as active participation in class. So that's a huge component, is that speaking component of our multilingual learners and giving them those opportunities to feel confident in speaking. And so when we're starting Socratic seminars in kindergarten, students are very comfortable with talking as a group, talking in a circle, that carries up then all the way through high school. So it gives them that exposure before they've gotten, they don't have the confidence, or all of a sudden the middle school trends come in and now we're a middle schooler and we don't want to talk at all. So this is the things that we look for when we're adopting our programs. And then here are the ways that we use the data. As you've heard me talk about a lot over the last 2 years, we're looking at how we're going to set the goals, the priorities. Luckily, this is where it pays to be a very, very small district, because we know our students. We know the 8 students who may be in the ESL program in 7th grade. So what are they and how are they scoring? So we are very fortunate in that sense. And it's all part of the WIDA score, or the access score, goes into a lot of our data meetings when we talk about students and where they are and where their expectations are. Do they need tier 3 reading intervention, or do they need extra support with ESL so that they can become a fluent reader as measured by our ELA benchmark scores? Okay.
Before we move on to my update, is there any questions? Before, Michael.
So I know that we had talked about this in committee, and it's obviously in the past year, the board has put into place, and you have put into place a program for ELA. ELA is showing us as very good results. and mathematics seems our opportunity. So, looking to the future with that opportunity, obviously we want to bring that score up as well. Can you talk a little bit about what we've been doing?
Sure. In ELA or in math?
In math,
In math.
what's on the horizon?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So we are, so understand that wit and wisdom, when you adopt a program, we're adopting the latest and greatest version. So we implemented, the latest version of wit and wisdom. So for example, they have texts in Spanish that are, companion text to what the students may be reading in their reading class. They can go then work with the ESL teacher in Accelerate, and the ESL teacher also pushes in and supports. So Wit and Wisdom has a lot of different Spanish opportunities and resources. Adopting iReady last year provided us with a lot of resources in Spanish as well. Students can take the iReady diagnostic assessments in Spanish. And teachers have access to all of that data at any time. So Reveal, we're currently talking to them about different upgraded features that they have. So students can take the Reveal assessments online in Spanish. It's not quite as beautiful, but they're getting there. And we constantly, this is certainly not unique to South Hunterdon. This is around New Jersey and everywhere around the country is the increasing number of multilingual learners. And so we're looking to implement more resources that support them. So last year when we rolled up Reveal in 7 and 8, they actually had come out with some Spanish edition of the textbook. So we were able to get the student workbook in Spanish to support those students. And then we're looking science. They just upgraded the science. So now the students can listen to the lessons in Spanish on their Chromebooks. So it's constantly finding those.
Are we doing a pilot now for two?
We are. So with the Ready math, all of the resources are in dual language. And that's truly what everybody is asking. And so once people ask, the publishers will provide it. So
And even with that, sorry to interrupt. but
yeah,
If we're focusing more on NJGPA, we're hoping like the pilot for the algebra
yes,
or the math.
yes, that's really our focus this year is math.
Are they listening in class while everyone else is listening to the teacher?
No,
Or-
no,
oh,
it would really be an Accelerate.
Oh.
And
So it's kind of like on top.
yes, yes, because language acquisition, and I am certainly not an expert, language acquisition for students comes in an immersion format. So the students, the research says the students in the classroom with the support, the push-in support of the ESL teacher is really how they're going to acquire the language the fastest. And that's really another reason why we push the small group instruction. So not only can our standards with support teacher or our special education teacher or our gen ed teacher work in small groups with tiered or targeted groups, the ESL teacher's right there as well and can pull the small group of ESL students as well. So, anytime we talk about standards with support, and special education, we're also talking about our multilingual learners so that we can provide them with the specific access and interventions that they need. Yeah.
So, great progress on the NJGPA. But that, assuming you have to get past the scoring both with English and math, at least on the math side, that still leaves us with 35% of our students that haven't reached that score. Do you know how many of them will achieve the appropriate by using the SAT or the PSAT? Do we know how many we do have that we need to get over the line? And will there be additional supports in advance of all testing to help get them?
Yes, absolutely. We know exactly who these students are. We track them regularly. Some of them are, remember, this is given to everybody. So there are students who, let's say in special education, receive special education services. They may not qualify based on their IEP for the DLM. And so they're also required to meet the 725, and that may not be an accurate representation of where they are and their ability and their academic level in terms of their IEP. But they are determined. But yes, that 35%, we know exactly who they are. And the information is shared with teachers and those supports are put into place. Gina.
I was just wondering, so this is with the NJGPA also, just if you could, I have two questions. The first one is, could you just clarify that on the slide with the subgroups, there could be students that are accounted for in more than one subgroup, I'm guessing. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Could be by race or special ed.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to make.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you had mentioned that, I just kind of assumed it was n equals 0. That was because it actually was 0, but then you said in your presentation that it was for 10 or under, but there's others. Yeah,
Yes.
where it's like equals 4.
Yeah.
So. Can you just?
Yep,
I'm
sure.
confused.
So the state typically says you do not need to report under 10, but the feedback from the committee was that you wanted to see the specifics of exactly those numbers. And so typically the state says you do not need to report out on those, but I wanted to make sure that we were thorough and based on the committee feedback, understanding where the students were at certain levels.
So then for the math subgroup. For students with disabilities, where it says n equals 0, does that actually mean that it's 0? That
No.
one? No.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting a nod from my wonderful data coach, new BA. It does mean 0.
Okay.
Oh, and I think this was in the, yes, I'm sorry, I got confused because this was in the slide in one of the bullets that
Yeah.
said it doesn't with the multilingual learners and the students with disabilities, there was not any students, and that was because that's why that was
Great.
not reported.
Thank you so much.
I have a question about the ELA portion of this testing and the notation, or at least the results related to kids who are at a socioeconomic disadvantage.
Mhm.
I noticed that, in the ELA portion of that, there was some concerns. Noted is there any plan around those things and how to address that?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And again, this is where, because we're so small, remember, we have 50 students in a grade. So we know exactly who the students are. We are talking about those students, who they are in their names. And we meet 3 times a year for the data meetings. So we're tracking that data with the implementation this year of Link It. We're even going to have more data to be able to track students over the cohort. So we'll be able to look and see where did those students score in their NJSLA in 8th grade, in 9th grade, and 10th grade. So we can track that ELA data. We also implemented Common Lit last year, which gives us a lot more exposure to standards-based assessments. So we can align and make sure that our students are exposed to the standards so that when we give the benchmark, the Common Lit benchmark 3 times a year, we know which standards we need to say, okay, so, when you're teaching the Great Gatsby, it's really important to make sure that you have the students have mastered this standard so that when they go to 11th grade and they take the NJGPA, we know they're solid. You haven't just exposed them to it. So those are the standards. And remember, the standards for ELA were changed and just implemented last year for 23-24. So those were new ELA standards that the teachers are still, we're getting used to because they changed a bit. So we need to make sure there's a couple different things. But I think when we look at the overall growth, I think those are the things we celebrate.
Of course.
Yep.
Well, how do we have students with disabilities for ELA, but not for math?
It could have been they took the DLM.
Oh, I couldn't, okay.
Yep.
So they had that was the thing.
Yep.
Got it.
Any other questions?
I think in committee, you talked about how frequently the students are able to meet the graduation requirements for that first year.
Mhm.
And I would be really interested in understanding how many kids have done that at the end of this year. Just
Sure.
like,
Yep.
once they've had that chance to take those other tests. So if we can
Absolutely.
have another report of that. That would be
Yes.
Very helpful.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and as we were talking in committee, I was remiss last year to do it, but, when we're starting to dive into this and really look at where we need to focus our energy. Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
I guess we'll move on to. Yeah. So although it's July 28th, it's still a busy time with a lot of things going on, so I wanted to give some updates. I've sent this out a couple times. We know there's a lot of moving parts, and we felt like, one visual so folks can kind of get these on the calendar. And then obviously our building principal will be sending out more detailed information about each one of these events. But there's going to be a lot happening, as we get into August. Obviously, one of the big things is the middle school and the open house and our ribbon cutting that's scheduled for August 11th. So I'll be sending more information out about that in the next couple of days. But again, this is a great way to really kind of lock in all the different events that will be happening in the month of August and early September. You should have all gotten an email probably about 3 o'clock today. We've started the annual registration process at Encores. So, the first question might be, well, why are you sending that out on July 28th? A lot of times people see things, they're like, it reminds me of school starting too soon. I want more of my summer vacation. But there's a reason behind it. If you looked at the last slide, a key date here is on the 14th of August. We are going to release all the information as far as for our elementary students who their classroom teacher will be, and for our 512 students, their schedules, right? Which we know that parents and especially kids are really anxious to see. But in order for all that to happen, parents need to complete this annual registration process. And it's not new. We've been doing it over the last couple of years. Basically, you're going to go into Encores. You're going to verify that all your information is accurate and correct. So, you have a new email or a new cell number. We want to make sure we have all the most up-to-date information. And then there's a bunch of forms in there that we're required to have completed each and every year. So obviously you'll do that online in the system. Once that happens, then it puts your child in good shape and you. So on August 14th, when you go in that morning, we'll probably open it up at 8 a.m. because we have an orientation that day for our 5th and 6th graders at the middle school. You'll be able to see schedules and classroom assignments. If you have not completed that annual process, it's just going to pop up the annual registration and you cannot see the schedule or the classroom teacher. So today was day 1 of this going out. Another reminder Monday next week and a couple more before that, because I know the pressure in each household when a child says everyone else is getting their schedule and I can't see mine. Why not? Just reminding the parents, we have a couple weeks here to complete that process. And again, if you have any questions about anything, or I can't get into my account, or it's not working, just email encoreshelp@shrsd.org, and obviously we'll get back to you quickly and provide you support. So middle school update. So the latest and greatest. Last week we passed our electrical and plumbing inspections. I wanted to give a big shout out, and hopefully you saw my post on social media for the Lambertville Fire Department and the New Hope Fire Company. So as part of our building, we have, it looks like a silo behind the building when you see it, but it's a 28,000 gallon reserve tank for water for the sprinkler system. So we had to get that filled in order to have all our inspections. And last week, they volunteered to fill that for us. So we had trucks coming in and out. They filled the 28,000 gallon tank, and now we're ready this Thursday to actually have the system turned on by the manufacturer. And then our fire code officials will be on site as well as we activate our sprinkler system. We will be starting up the septic system tomorrow morning, and we have folks from the township that will be there, as well as some representation from the DEP. The goal would be that our engineers matrix, if all goes well, will issue a letter to the DEP and the township stating that the system is working as designed, and that should hopefully trigger our temporary certificate of occupancy, which we need for August 11th. Final paving, although it was brutally hot, was completed today of the parking lots. The striping of the parking lots is scheduled to take place this Wednesday. The landscapers will be back this week. One of the things that we need to get is a letter from Hunterdon County Soil Conservation to the township. So our landscapers will come back. The area where the septic was built and then the area next to the softball field needs to be seeded and stabilized. As soon as that happens, we'll get Hunterdon County back out And then they would submit a letter saying that we're good from their end as far as the PCO. So there's a lot of moving parts, but we're in really good shape. We've made a lot of great progress in the last 10 days. We have a few things that will wrap up in the next week. And, kudos to everyone involved, all the many moving parts to get this done. As I mentioned, we're going to do a ribbon cutting on Monday, August 11th at 10 a.m. We've invited a bunch of folks to attend that. We're really excited about that. And then that will be followed by an open house for parents, students, any community member, basically from 11 to 1 or 5 to 7. You can come in, we'll have tours, we'll be there, we can walk you around the building. And it will be really exciting for folks to be able to see it for the first time. And then we start on that Thursday with our 5th and 6th graders with like a formal orientation process where we basically have parents and kids come in, and then there will be a separate date following week on the 19th for our 7th and 8th graders to really have them walk through their schedules, find classrooms, lockers, all the different things that our middle schoolers will be exposed to. It's a really exciting time, the culmination obviously of the referendum, and we're excited. It's going to be a busy month.
What day do you think the PCO will then kind of come into?
Probably sometime next week if all goes well. Hoping for maybe Wednesday, a week from Wednesday. Like I said, the biggies that are left: soil conservation, the septic tomorrow morning, the fire pump on Thursday. We got already approval from DRCC, which we have to submit to the township, so we're good to go there. We got our water results back over the weekend, which were favorable. So the health department can then submit their letter to the township, so we're good to go there. And then the last thing that will happen is our township will come through and do a final building inspection. And then that triggers.
Physically give us.
They'll give us, yeah. And then we'll still have some things to do to get the final CO. That probably won't happen until sometime in the fall. All right. So I did want to provide an update on the turf field. So if you remember, back in December, the board approved the turf project. After a lot of research and taking a look at one of the commitments that the board made several years ago, which is try to house many of our athletic programs on campus, including with the middle school, now that we're going to have the middle school on site. So we approved, an estimate from our contractor that's going to be putting in the turf. As they began to design the turf field in January, it was determined by engineers that we were going to need an additional drainage system for the field to manage stormwater. So over the last several months, the board has been aware. Our engineering team has been working on the design, to provide to the turf vendor. And you can see this is basically the design. So this is the existing field. And what they are going to do is they're going to put an underground drainage system as part of the project that will drain out into our basins. And what we're going to be doing is we've already started where this red X is, clearing a lot of space and a lot of the soil removal from the site that when we dig up for the turf, and also when we dig up for the drainage system, will be placed in this area to build an additional practice area for our football program. So this, if you are familiar with the site, as you get over to this area, it kind of drops off. Now that area is cleared, and the fill that comes out of this is going to make that completely level with the side of the track area and be able to use it as a practice field. So with that, there has been some additional cost for the project. So the original price, you can see there, that was approved in December, the new drainage system, and as well as the cost to remove the fill in the topsoil. We're actually going to do that on site. It's much more expensive to have it removed somewhere off site. So what we decided is between what we're going to use for the practice area over here, right, for the new field, we then have some area where our pole barn is that we're going to drop some of it to use for future use to repair fields, baseball, softball. And then we have an area over at the middle school. We're going to truck it over and use some of it over there for some more grading. So with that, that's an additional $86,000 to move all that dirt with the trucks from the turf company. So the new cost, you can see it there. The board was made aware back in the winter that there was going to be some additional designs, right, which would include some additional costs. The board made the decision to budget $500,000 in our capital reserve account to pay towards this project and then finance the remaining amount. Peter's working on now with our financial advisors, Phoenix, obtaining the funding and what the actual payments will be. So we'll share that at our August finance meeting and then at our August board meeting. Next steps, our engineers, will be submitting. So in order to get approval for the project, we have to submit the DRCC and Hunterdon County Soil Conservation. So that's gonna happen in the next couple of weeks. And then the goal would be is, originally we had hoped that we would have been able to do it this summer, ready for the fall, obviously with some of the additional design and drainage and permitting. That's not gonna happen. So the goal now would be that we would start it at the end of the fall athletic season, which will probably be right at the beginning of November. And if all goes well, we'll be ready to utilize for the spring season, which is important because when we talk about middle school softball and some other things, it gives us some additional field space to be able to keep folks on site rather than move them off site. So in the fall, we will continue to use some of the space that we've utilized in the past. We've been fortunate that West Amwell has a lot of its field to use. We will continue to do that, Hewitt Park. And moving forward, though, the goal would be hopefully once we have the turf, we'll be able to keep folks, especially in the fall, all on campus. We do have a nice area now with all the reconfiguration that we definitely will be able to utilize for an additional practice space, just not this year because half of it is really nice. The other half is just where they did the grading. Grass is growing, but it's with the summer heat. I would want to wait a year and then that would look a lot nicer this time next year to be able to use in the fall 26. So I did want to provide an update on the turf. I know we had gotten some questions Jason had from some of our athletic parents about just kind of what was the status. All right, so the West Amwell School. So just so the community is aware, the board is aware. So the board has made the decision to sell the property. Okay, we were contacted by the Bucks Hunterdon YMCA with potential interest in the property. Their CEO and director of facilities met me on site Tuesday, July 15th. We toured the facility. They looked at it. They decided they were going to go back and use some of the metrics that they use to determine feasibility wise if it made sense for them to purchase a property. One of the things that they had spoken about was that they really were looking for somewhere in between Flemington and Doylestown for their New Hope and their Lambertville residents. Then after that visit, we followed up with them and then we gave them actually a price of a number because they asked me for it. And then we got this email late last week. And basically what it's saying is that, they got a bunch of different things in the hopper right now in the next 3 to 5 years in Raritan Township, Clinton Township, and they did some analysis and they just felt like it didn't meet their needs at this particular time. So we were really hopeful for that. I know the board was really excited about that opportunity, but it is what it is. We tried our best. So we need to move on to our next steps. So our next steps with the property is that the board will be signing a contract with a commercial broker. It's actually Cushman Wakefield, which is located in Morristown, New Jersey. And we will begin the process of preparing to place the property in what's called a commercial property auction. This is an online auction in which we set a reserve price. So we provide a number behind the scenes so nobody knows what that number is ahead of time. And when they do the bid, which is an online process, which can go for a period of 2 days, if one of the individuals that's bidding on that project comes in at the reserve number or above the reserve number, the board is required to accept that. If it comes below the reserve number, the board is not required to accept that. And the property will be sold as is. So we're going to be talking a little bit more in detail, some legal things in executive session tonight, but that would be the next step. We were waiting to see, quite honestly, if things did play out with the Y before we signed the contract, because we were trying to save the commission, right? Because we were the ones who found the Y, not Cushman Wake. But now the fact that, that has not worked out, we'll move forward with them and then they'll start preparing for the auction, which is probably going to take some time before, and I don't really have a timeline yet. I'll have a better idea moving forward of when that would be for the auction. As far as the water update, so everybody knows the issue with Lehigh Power or Lehigh Fluid Power. So the district met with them on June 20th. Both sides had legal representation. The meeting also included the LSRP, the licensed site remediation professional that Lehigh had to hire as per the DEP. There's 2 possible remediations for the 1,4-dioxane contamination that was caused by Lehigh. And they requested at the meeting that we meet again on August 25th to allow them to kind of weigh both options before making a decision. And they also have to obtain input from the DEP based on both options. So, more to tell in our September board meeting, but that's where we are. We'll meet again on August 25th, kind of see where things stand and see next steps. Obviously, this plays into the sale of the property, right? We want to make sure, if we're going to go out for a commercial auction, it's up to any individual who's going to bid, do their due diligence ahead of the auction on all the different nuances of the property. This is going to be questions that we're going to get from folks who might be interested of what's the status of this remediation, when it's going to happen, who's responsible, will it be done before we were to take ownership of the property. So those are all the things we need to kind of work out. And hopefully by August 25th, we'll have a better idea of a resolution and a timeline that goes along with it that we can share with the community. And then my last piece, I did want to share, totally changing gears, but this is an important one. So on our agenda this evening, there is a new homework regulation, regulation 2330. So over the last several years, when we administer our annual climate and culture survey, the top of the homework has come up repeatedly. Comments from parents within the community about inconsistencies of homework, no homework, or I don't really see what my child's doing because there is no homework assigned. So we decided to take this on as a district. And we basically developed this regulation using a committee of teachers that I facilitated over the last 6 months. And then we also had input from all of our staff, where once we drafted a regulation, we sent it out to the entire staff as a whole, and we got feedback, and we looked at that feedback at the committee level. I shared it with my district parent council just to kind of get their feedback. What areas did they have questions about? There's time allotments per grade level where there's going to be expectations. So there's consistency among our teaching staff. So we got feedback there. And then obviously the board has taken a lot of time as well in 2 committees, in our policy committee, as well as our curriculum committee, really vetting this out, looking at it, making, some modifications. So here we are tonight, where it's the second read for this regulation, which will go in effect for this coming school year. I'll also be sending out, along with the regulation, a parent FAQ. We've been working on that in school and community. We just finalized it at our last meeting. So as much as, we hope that the parents will read the regulation, obviously we tried to take that information and put it into more of a user-friendly format in an FAQ. And really, this will be a huge talking point for our principals and our teachers at the beginning of the year with our students, as well as at back to school night, just so parents have a true understanding that this is the expectation of what kids are now going to have starting in kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. Obviously, it varies very differently from elementary, middle, and high school. How we want our kids as they get older to self-advocate and take the lead in communicating to their teachers. There's also strategies if it's not working for a parent in the FAQ. What do I do? I'm finding that although there's allotments put in there, it's taking my child much longer than the allotments as per the regulation. What do I do with that? There's recommendations on that. So again, as the goal was really to try to bring consistency, rigor, and prepare our students from the time they're in elementary school to the time they get into high school, we feel confident this regulation is moving us in the right direction. So I just kind of wanted to give some background on it. We've been talking obviously a little bit as we reported out for our policy meeting, but now it's here tonight, and if the board approves it tonight, it will be official moving forward as the regulation in the district. And that is all I have. Lots of different things that are going on. Any questions from the board from my portion?
Okay. So we've come to the time of the evening for our first period of public comment. We invite you, if you have something to bring before the board, to come to the podium. Ask that you identify your name and the community in which you live, and try and keep your remarks to about 3 minutes. So with that, does anyone have anything they'd like to bring before the board this evening?
Good evening, members of the board. Bob Allen, Rock Road East. I come in front of you guys today as the mayor of West Amwell. Some of you may be aware we're going through a significant upgrade at Hewitt Park. And part of that upgrade is we're going to redo the snack shack and the playground. It's in need of some more equipment. So I kindly ask you guys, if you have any equipment either playground or kitchen equipment that you will not be utilizing following the closure of West Amwell Elementary. You take a look at it and possibly help donate it to the cause. That would help us, meet our budget. Do have some grant money. But that being said, we have some big plans for the park and it would go a long way. If you guys have something we could use. Okay. I'm sure someone knows how to get in touch with me. Or you want to set up a meeting. If you guys have anything, I don't know what you do have or don't have, but like I said, anything would help us. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably a great way to, support the community. Yeah, I know my kids have had a great time over the years at Hewitt Park. A lot of good times on that playground, so. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to bring before the board? Do we have anybody online? We do. Okay, well, given that there will be another period of public comment later on this evening, I will close this period of public comment and we'll just go into our committee reports, beginning with the buildings, grounds, transportation, finance, and safety. That committee did meet last Wednesday. Wednesday. I was there. I don't remember which day. Sorry. Brian was there, and I believe he posted a report or minutes. So rather than going through all of the items we discussed, I'm going to ask for someone to make a motion to approve items A through T, Q, R, S, T through T, A through T. And if we can have a motion and a second for that, then we can go through and discuss and answer any questions that you might have. So that was Aaron on the motion, and I believe Jen on the second. Thank you. Okay, so we're open for discussion. Couple of things. Please go. Yeah.
So just a couple of things I want to draw attention to. One's important, our St. John's lease agreement for preschool. So obviously we've been working on this over the last several months. It's on the agenda for approval tonight with the effective date of August 1st. So that would mean, obviously, if the board approves it tonight, then we can start moving in August 1st. And we were ready for our 2 preschool classes, starting, in September. A couple of other things I want to mention: CEA facility rental agreement. So the CEA is a program that we rent space to in the high school, 2 classroom spaces. This is a 1-year agreement. We only agreed to a 1-year agreement. We're still looking at our options for year 2, just as we expand with some of the Performing Arts Academy. We've had some internal discussions about the fact that we may want to utilize that space. So we did share with CEA that we would let them know, but more than likely there is a good possibility that this could be the last year. I just wanted to mention that. I also wanted to mention, because this is a big one, because you may see this number on the agenda and be like, what the heck? Why are we writing a check to the IRS for $573,000? So just the history, when the referendum funds were obtained, the bonds, we obviously invested the money, the $33,412,000. And during that time, when we invested the money, we made interest on it. However, the IRS states that you're only allowed to make a certain amount of interest on that money, and then once you hit a certain number, it's called arbitrage, and you have to give the remaining amount to the IRS. So over the course of the bonds, and we now have everything out of the NJARM account. The NJARM account was the account that we took the money to actually gain interest on by investing it. But now, as we come to the conclusion of our project, obviously everything's out of NJARM. So over the course of that time, we earned about $2.8 million in interest. However, we have to give back $573,000 of it. So the board, actually reading the letter that we actually just got, they, I believe, want their check by August 10th. The IRS does. So it's on tonight's agenda, but when folks see it, I just wanted to make sure people were crystal clear and knew why we would be submitting, obviously, a check for that amount to the IRS.
And that amount is not something that's coming out of any of our other accounts.
Right.
It's not a spend. It's, we earned a certain amount of money for doing nothing. And we have to give some of it back.
Yeah, and we knew all along our cutoff was $2.2 million. So we were planning accordingly, knowing that whatever we made over 2.2, we were never gonna see anyway. So it's not like we were anticipating that we were gonna make 2.8, we knew that all along going on. It's just a bit painful that you have to write that $500,000 check out to the federal government. Anyway, so that's all.
And one of
So if they turn around and use it for some funding for school,
I wanted to also just call out that we are still receiving preschool funds, so the contract that we have for St. John's is fully funded
Correct.
still by preschool.
And that's actually on the agenda as well. You know, in speaking of that, Jim brought up a good point. So we were concerned. I had it in my update. I took it out based on what we received on Friday. There was, you know, if you've been following along, you know, it was a concern that we weren't going to get any of our title funding.
that's federal funding.
Yeah, from the federal government.
Preschool is state funding.
Yeah, I'm just talking.
I know, I just want to make sure
Yeah,
everybody
yeah, yeah. So, you know, that's $137,000 that we talked about. So, you know, from what we heard on Friday, it is going to be released because it's been held up. Although we haven't heard any details exactly when we would get that information. And there were several emails that I saw going from different districts today saying, reminding everyone that as much as we are happy with the information, we haven't gotten any details on when we're gonna get it, how we're gonna get it, which we typically would get it by July 1st.
August 11th, after we send them.
No, that's true.
August 10th.
True. You can develop
And the release of the funds, is it the full, would we expect that we would get everything, or it could be that we don't, like, it's still up in the air?
It is still up in the air. I mean, there was this, you know, they had released, if you followed along, they had released, I think, what was it, like 1.3 billion or something for just summer programs. And then there was still like a 5.2 that was hanging out there. And then now supposedly they're gonna release the rest, but again, you haven't got any detail on when is that gonna actually happen.
Does anyone have any other questions on any of these items? A through T, take a moment. Okay. Think there's no question. We have no questions, then you can join calling a roll.
Yep.
Vote, please.
Jennifer Batchelor,
Yes.
Martha Bennett,
Yes.
Jean Bichetti,
Yes.
Kevin Gogoleski,
Yes.
Erin O'Leary,
Yes.
Michael Stroud,
Yes.
Ronnie Todd Marino.
Yes.
Jim Gallagher.
Yes.
Frank B.
Personnel, it's okay.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Personnel committee met last week on Wednesday. But I have the right information. I'm looking at my notes. There. We had a very quick meeting. You can see in the agenda, the personnel appointments, resignations, and other actions. So Tony went over those with us. We were also informed of the current openings in the district, which currently there's been no change, I'm guessing. Include high school band, high school English, and elementary school paraprofessional position. Also, just as a point of interest, there's new teacher orientation being held on August 18th through the 20th. And the teachers will return ahead of the students, so they'll be back in the classrooms from August 26th through the 28th. And with that, I would like to move A and B.
So moved. Do I hear a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Leary. Yep. Any discussion on items A and B?
I just have one thing to say, sad and happy at the same time. So if you notice on the agenda, we're losing Gabe Stevens, who's our band teacher. Gabe, about a week ago, was hired as the new supervisor of visual and performing arts in the Parsippany Troy School District. So he's now going to be an administrator. I'm happy for him. He's going to be an amazing administrator, but I'm sad because he's an unbelievable band teacher. So, you know, we wish him the best. You'll see his resignations here. We'll see how things play out. Right now, technically, he has a 60-day clause. But, you know, Dave has just been, I mean, parents can attest, graduate of South Hunterdon. The halftime shows, all the different things, the trips that he does. with our students. He's been an amazing, addition to our staff, so we'll greatly miss you.
Totally agree. So and Gabe is a South Hunterdon graduate himself. So we always like to see our alumni moving on to bigger and better things, but it is a shame to see him go. I think he's been the teacher, the band teacher here for probably 7 years. Mr. Smith, who had been here for 36 years before him when he retired, and Gabe just came in and did such a tremendous job revitalizing that program, and kids love it. So I wish him personally all the best. I'm so sorry to see you go. And I'll also note the baseball coach, Ben Dunahee, who was here for 2 seasons, did a fantastic job. He has a long commute and some family issues, and that's why he's not able to come back. But I know that he was a great mentor to those boys on the baseball team. So this is as well.
Just on the Mr. Stevens thing, I also just wanted to comment that he was really starting and thinking of some good ideas. I think he was behind the trip that the kids did to New York and got the LAF grant. And I just think it's important that to reassure that I mean, I know I speak for myself, but I could also speak for board members that we fully support those things that were happening, and that no matter who comes in to fill that position, and just to kind of reassure parents and our community members that we are going to try to, make sure that we get somebody who can come in and also continue those things.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
so everyone knows, we posted last week. We've also already got several applicants, so we're excited. We're gonna probably conduct interviews early next week. So yeah, I mean, the goal is continue to move forward. We got the Performing Arts Academy coming online, and obviously, instrumental and vocal is not gonna be for a couple years out. But this is a huge hire, just not only for our own program, but as we grow the program with the academy. Hopefully we'll attract a very viable academy.
Any other discussion on items A and B?
Martha Bennett,
Yes.
Gina Pichetti,
Yes.
Kevin Kowalewski,
Yes.
Erin O'Leary,
Yes.
Michael Stroud,
Yes.
Jennifer Batchelor.
Yes.
Ronnie Todd Marino.
Yeah.
Jim Gallagher.
Yes. Curriculum and technology.
Thank you. We met on July 16th at 6 p.m. In the media center. Actually, let's see. Yeah, right down the hallway. We received an update on technology. The St. John's setup is now fully installed. We're glad that they will have internet and phone there. And the middle school was also really close to installation. I believe that we have gotten there now, but there was one sign that was still needing to go in. All of our security systems are active, our AV is installed. And then they were waiting just on quality assurance, which I was glad to hear we were doing. We'll also be ordering an additional set of Macs for our TV production studio, and those will be coming soon. And finally, the middle school website is going to be updated. I know that it's in a bit of a transition right now, as we are in a bit of a transition, but new photography and information is coming soon there. We went over the NJ GPA and access presentations that we just saw. We also will be moving forward a bilingual waiver, which is basically state mandated because we do not have a bilingual teacher. We just have to complete a waiver and submit to the state. We also talked a little bit about a policy that Martha's going to be talking about in just a moment, but honoring student achievement. We discussed, as many of you know, the valedictorian is not a thing anymore, and participation in our graduation ceremonies has been coming through different avenues, and we talked about how that would look in the future and how students would be able to participate in graduation in coming years. We also got an update on the Gifted and Talented program. As many of you know, we performed a review of that and have been working with an advisory group of parents over the past year. it is now coming to fruition. There will be a guidebook going up by the end of the summer on a website that is also going up by the end of the summer. And in our August board meeting, we will be receiving a full update on it in the meeting. And as Tony just mentioned, we also talked about the title funding and the implications of the delay. I'm not sure, but we definitely did have one thing that was delayed, which was all out of district travel for teachers was currently being held. But as soon as we get the funding, hopefully that can be released. With that, I would like to move item B.
So moved. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Ronnie, thank you. Any discussion on item B, the bilingual waiver? There is no discussion. Let's vote.
Gina Fischetti,
Yes.
Kevin Kowalski,
Yes.
Erin O'Leary,
Yes.
Michael Strauss,
Yes.
Jennifer Bachelor,
Yes.
Martha Dennis,
Yes.
Ronnie Todd Marino.
Yes.
And Jim Gallagher.
Yes. Policy, Mrs. Dent.
Thank you, and thank you, Michael. Kicking off with items for first read, which is policy 5440 on honoring student achievement. This is not a mandatory change. It's a review suggested by one of our board members. As background, the policy has not been updated since 2016. We wanted to evaluate if policy and practices needed to be updated so that we were sufficiently distinguishing, particularly around our honor roll. As background, our grading scale has been adjusted from 3 years ago. In fact, the current graduating class is the last one to use the prior grading system. It is now aligned to College Board standards. At the moment, the school district is not distinguishing between the two honor roll categories of distinguished and meritorious. We wanted to look at that. 5th grade is where 11th grade starts as a reminder, and the honor roll currently starts in 7th grade. So our recommended changes is to initiate honor roll in the 9th grade. We're going to update the scale. We looked at scales from both Manville and North Hunterdon. We recommend that the honor roll, we must attain an average of 84 with no grade lower than 80 in all of the courses. And for high honor roll, you must attain an average of 94 with no grade lower than 90 in any of the courses. We are coordinating with the curriculum committee and getting feedback from them. And then we would want to work with school and community to approach communicating and the approach to honoring the students. And just as a discussion item, and this is not a change to 5440, but looking at how to honor student achievement in other areas from a character and integrity standpoint. So just further discussions happening on that. And Tony did most of the work for me on regulation 2330. So I won't belabor that point, but we do have that for a second read. I'll open it up for any questions.
So let's make a motion to approve items A and B.
Please move A. Motion please to move A and B.
Okay, now we need a second.
Second.
And a second by Aaron. Thank you. So let's discuss it. So then we'll discuss on items A and B, the homework policy or the honoring student achievement. So remember, honoring student achievement, you are welcome to take that now between these meetings. And this meeting in August is your opportunity to take a closer look and, forward any changes to the one. If you have any questions, concerns. Do we have any discussion this evening?
I just want to express appreciation for how you approach the regulation for homework. It's something that, really, there's a lot of thought and a lot of input on that. And I think that that's going to be the most effective way of approaching anything. So I wanted to.
Very good.
And staff did a great job of giving feedback, providing input.
Any other discussion on that? If not, let's vote.
Kevin Kowalski,
Yes.
Erin O'Leary,
Yes.
Michael Strauss,
Yes.
Jennifer Bachelor,
Yes.
Martha Dennis,
Yes.
Gina Fischetti,
Yes.
Ronnie Todd Marino.
Yes.
And Jim Gallagher.
Yes. The school and community.
Right, so school and community met on July 23rd. We talked about the homework, frequently asked questions document that will support the new homework regulation, and that will go out to families sometime in August, before the start of the school year. We also talked about the Student Board of Education representative. This is going to be the 4th year where we've had a student since the legislation that requires we have a Student Board of Education member. And so we talked a little bit about what responsibilities would be expected of that position. We looked at how other districts approach the position. But we also recognize that we have a new high school principal, Adam Wright is going to be coming, and he and Jason Miller are taking a look at the role and structure of the student council. And because the student council and the Board of Education student member would interact, then that would be as they're defining that. They would be taking a look at and proposing a way to change the role. We took a look at the dual enrollment press release, and that article is really about highlighting all of the expansion of the dual enrollment program, and give some links to the research and the reports about the long-term benefits of dual enrollment programs on student education outcome. We looked at the middle school question and answer document. There's a lot of questions about what to expect from a middle school. So that is something that will go out to students and parents, sort of explaining the basics of what to expect from the new middle school. And we took a look at this year's climate survey results, really just going over like the raw data and the comments. And Tony's begun drafting a report on that that will be shared in the September report. And that is it's nothing to.
One thing I just wanted to mention, and this is a little preview of the press release, but I just wanted to celebrate this. I think this right here in our inaugural year of the dual enrollment program, we had 35 students complete 50 courses, collectively earning 193 college credits. Just kudos to our teachers for investing in that process and working with us. Kudos to Dr. Lutko in his previous role, and Dan Ellen, as far as making these relationships with many colleges now, because that number will only grow. And as you'll see when the press release goes out later this week, we all know that college costs continue to increase. So anything we can do to help our parents pay a much reduced rate for credit than they would if the child was in college is a win-win for everyone. So on that, I'll look that.
Okay, we had no harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents since there's no school. We did have fire drills and safety drills on the dates in June that are listed there where school went out. And that brings us to our second and final period of public comment for the evening. So same rules apply. Once again, if you have something to say, by all means, come up to the podium and tell us what's on your mind. Seeing nobody motivated to come to the podium, have anybody online? Don't think we do it.
No.
Then I'm going to take one last look around the room. I'm going to say, okay, we're going to close the period of public comment. We do have a need to go into an executive session this evening to discuss a couple of confidential matters. That will probably take 20 minutes or so. We will not take any action after we come out of executive session. So with that, I do need a motion to go into executive session at 8:13. So moved by Ronnie and seconded by Martha. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. So we'll meet at our usual spot.